Welcome to Tellumin Insights, where we reveal the hidden forces that shape the way you live and show you how to use them to create real transformation and supercharge your health, mindset, and daily life. Here are your hosts, Emma Greenwood and Nathan Sinclair.
I'm Nathan Sinclair, and we are going deep today, like really deep. We're talking about Luc Montagnier.
I am Emma Greenwood, and I'm excited to unpack this.
This guy won a Nobel Prize, right, for his work on HIV.
Yeah, that's the thing everybody knows him for. But this deep dive is about the stuff he did later.
Not the HIV stuff.
Right, not the HIV stuff. Later in his career, he got into some, well, pretty controversial areas.
Lay it on me. What are we talking about here?
Water memory and electromagnetic biology.
Okay, now you've got my attention. What exactly does that even mean?
Well, Montagnier was really interested in whether DNA could send out signals, like specific electromagnetic signals.
Signals? You mean like radio waves or something?
Kind of, yeah. And the idea was that these signals could be detected, maybe even transmitted.
So like DNA is broadcasting information.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. He found that this wasn't happening with all DNA, just bacterial and viral DNA.
Wait, so not our DNA, just the DNA of the bugs that can make us sick.
Right, like they have their own special way of communicating.
That's pretty wild. How did he even figure this out?
Through some pretty fascinating experiments. In one of them, he used these really diluted solutions of bacterial DNA.
Diluted? How diluted are we talking?
So diluted that, theoretically, there shouldn't have been any actual DNA molecules left in the solution.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So practically no DNA, but there were still signals.
You got it. And this is where things get even more interesting. He set up two test tubes side by side. One with this super diluted bacterial DNA solution, the other one with just plain water.
Okay, two test tubes. One with basically ghost DNA and one with water. Then what?
He exposed both of these test tubes to a 7 Hertz electromagnetic field overnight.
Hold on. Why 7 Hertz specifically? Did that number have some kind of significance?
It sure did. Remember the Schumann resonance?
The what now?
It's the Earth's natural electromagnetic frequency, from all those lightning discharges in the atmosphere.
Oh, right. I've heard about that.
Well, the strongest of those Schumann resonances is around 7.83 hertz. Pretty close to the 7 hertz used in the experiment, right?
Okay, so there could be a connection between this frequency and what biological process?
Exactly. It's a pretty wild thought.
Okay, so we've got our two test tubes, the 7 hertz field, and we leave them overnight. What happened in the morning?
Get this. They found the same electromagnetic signature in the water-only tube that was originally only in the DNA tube.
Wait, what? So the DNA's information somehow got transferred to the water through this electromagnetic field.
It seems that way, like the 7 hertz field acted as a carrier wave or something.
That's incredible. But wouldn't that mean the DNA could basically talk to water through this electromagnetic field?
It's a pretty radical idea, right? Think of it like two tuning forks. You know how when you strike one, a nearby fork tuned to the same frequency will start vibrating?
Yeah, I've seen that. It's called resonance, right?
Exactly. And Montagnier's work suggests something similar might be happening at a molecular level with DNA and water.
That's a pretty awesome analogy. But I got to say, a lot of scientists are they're pretty skeptical of Montagnier's claims. They call it pseudoscience.
Oh, absolutely. Lots of pushback. And, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
For sure. But, science is all about questioning and exploring, right? Even overturning old ideas.
Totally. We have to stay open-minded. Remember when everyone thought the Earth was flat? Or how about continental drift? People laughed at that idea at first, and now it's like basic geology.
Good point. Oh, and what about those prions? Didn't those shake things up too?
Prions, absolutely. Those were a game changer. They challenged the whole idea that only DNA and RNA could transmit genetic information.
Okay, remind me, what exactly are prions again?
Priors are like misfolded proteins, and the thing is, they can cause other proteins to misfold too.
So they spread their weird shape.
Exactly. They basically spread their abnormal shape, and that was a huge deal because it showed us that maybe information transfer in biology wasn't limited to just DNA and RNA.
Ah, got it. So are we drawing a parallel here? Are you saying that maybe Montagnier's work with these electromagnetic signals could be another example of information transfer that goes beyond the classic DNA-RNA model?
It's definitely an intriguing possibility, isn't it?
No kidding. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's switch gears for a minute. Montagnier also did some really interesting work on HIV replication, specifically within macrophages. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So for a long time, everyone thought that HIV replication mainly happened in the cytoplasm of infected cells.
Okay, the cytoplasm, that's the jelly-like stuff inside the cell.
Right. But Montagnier's research indicated that HIV might also be replicating inside the nuclei of macrophages.
Hold on. You're saying the virus was hiding out and multiplying in a different part of the cell than we originally thought.
Exactly. And that has some major implications, especially when it comes to treatment.
Right, because if we're only targeting the virus in one part of the cell, we could be missing a whole other piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And this just highlights the importance of questioning our assumptions, even when it comes to viruses we think we understand.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of challenging conventional thinking, let's move on to another area of Montagnier's research that sparked a lot of interest: potential cancer treatments.
Okay, now we're getting into some really exciting territory.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Well, remember how we talked about DNA potentially emitting these unique electromagnetic signals?
Yeah, like each DNA sequence had its own fingerprint in the electromagnetic spectrum. That was pretty mind-blowing.
Right. So what if we could identify the specific electromagnetic signatures of cancer cells?
Okay, and then what? What could we do with that information?
What if we could use specific frequencies to target those cancer cells and disrupt their growth?
Wait, are you saying we could use electromagnetic waves to fight cancer?
It's a possibility, and it would be pretty revolutionary.
No kidding. I mean, that would open up the possibility of non-invasive cancer treatments.
Exactly. Treatments that could target the tumor cells directly without harming healthy tissue.
That's incredible. But is that even possible?
It's still theoretical at this point. Lots more research is needed, but the potential is definitely there.
Okay, so lots of potential, but more research is needed. Makes sense.
Yeah, which is often the case with groundbreaking research. It takes time, lots of investigation, and a willingness to be both skeptical and open-minded.
Well said.
I mean, it really makes you rethink how we usually think about life.
Right.
We tend to just focus on the physical stuff.
The cells, the molecules, all that.
Right, but what if there's this whole other level, like a more energetic side of things?
You're bringing us back to that 7 hertz thing, right? From the water memory experiment?
Exactly.
It's just so close to that Earth frequency.
The Schumann resonance, yeah.
Could they be connected? What do you think about that?
Well, the Schumann resonance is basically a bunch of frequencies.
Okay.
And they're generated by those lightning discharges in the atmosphere. And they bounce back and forth between the Earth and the ionosphere.
So it's like a heartbeat for the planet.
Kind of, yeah. It's a pretty trippy concept.
No kidding.
And the strongest of those Schumann resonances is, like we said, around 7.83 hertz.
Right. Super close to the 7 hertz they used in the experiment.
Right. And that's why some researchers think that maybe life on Earth actually evolved in sync with these frequencies.
Wait, are you saying that these frequencies could actually influence how life works?
It's a really fascinating idea.
Yeah, it's like we're all tuned into this planetary heartbeat.
It is. And if it's true, I mean, it could completely change how we see everything.
Like what?
I mean, everything from evolution to consciousness.
Okay, now my mind is officially blown.
But let's bring it back down to Earth for a second.
Okay, yeah, good idea.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I love thinking about all that big picture stuff, we do have more to talk about with Montagnier.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What else did he work on?
Well, one area where his research could have a really big impact is antibiotic resistance.
Okay, now you're talking, that's a huge problem.
It is a major global health threat.
And those old antibiotics just aren't cutting it anymore.
Right, and that's where Montagnier's work could come in.
How so?
Remember how his research showed that bacterial and viral DNA send out the strongest electromagnetic signals?
Yeah, it was like they were all speaking the same language.
Exactly. And what if we could understand that language?
You're saying we could disrupt their communication?
Maybe even reprogram their DNA using specific frequencies.
Whoa.
It could be a game changer, a whole new way to fight superbugs.
That would be amazing. But let's be real, this is pretty controversial stuff, right? Why do you think there's so much resistance to his ideas?
I mean, it challenges some pretty fundamental beliefs.
About how biology works.
Exactly. It's like a totally different way of looking at things.
And not everyone's comfortable with that kind of change.
Right. Like, anytime someone questions the status quo, there's going to be pushback.
It's human nature.
Exactly.
But didn't some of the biggest scientific discoveries come from people who challenged those old ideas?
Totally. I mean, think about Galileo.
The Earth goes around the sun.
Yeah. People thought he was crazy, but he was right.
So how do we find that balance between being skeptical and open-minded.
It's tricky, right? We need to be critical, but also open to new possibilities.
So discerning skeptics, not just dismissers.
Exactly.
We need to look at the evidence
Consider all sides.
and be willing to change our minds if the data shows us something new.
Right, and that's where application comes in.
What do you mean?
Other scientists need to try and reproduce Montagnier's experiment.
Using the same methods.
Exactly. If they get the same results, then we can start to explore the possibilities.
And if those experiments work out, what could that mean for medicine?
I mean, the possibilities are huge.
Give me an example.
What if we could treat diseases like cancer and HIV with electromagnetic frequencies?
Targeted treatments.
Right. It could be less invasive, more effective, fewer side effects.
It sounds almost too good to be true.
I know, right?
But we have to be careful with this kind of technology.
Absolutely.
It's powerful stuff.
We need to make sure it's used ethically.
For good, not for harm.
Exactly. And that means having open conversations about the potential risks and benefits.
Involving scientists, ethicists, everyone.
Right. It's not just about science. It's about using that science responsibly.
And empowering people to think critically.
To question what they hear.
To make their own informed decisions.
Well, exactly.
Okay, well, before we wrap up, I wanted to go back to something you said earlier.
Okay.
About how Montagnier's work could challenge our understanding of life itself.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Can you talk a little more about that?
Sure. At its core, his research is asking what life really is.
And how it works.
Right. Like, how is biological information transmitted? If DNA can communicate through these waves,
Yeah.
it's a whole new level of complexity and interconnectedness.
It's not just about the physical stuff, but also the energy and information that flows between things.
Exactly.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. We're expanding our definition of what it means to be alive.
Why?
And who knows what else we'll find as we keep exploring.
That's what I love about this kind of research.
Me too.
It's pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
And opening up all sorts of new questions.
Well, I, for one, am excited to see where it all goes.
Me too.
Now, before we get to our final thoughts, I want to ask you, our listeners, what's been sticking with you during this deep dive? What questions or ideas have come up for you? Take a moment to think about that before we come back for the last part of this episode. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of Luc Montagnier.
It's been a wild ride, right? From water memory to electromagnetic signals, his work has really challenged our thinking.
It's made us reconsider what we thought we knew about biology.
And even what it means to be alive.
We've talked about the potential benefits of Montagnier's research.
New ways to fight antibiotic resistance. Maybe even new cancer treatments.
But what about the risks? I mean, this is powerful stuff. What if it falls into the wrong hands?
That's a really important question. Any new technology can be used for good or bad.
So how do we make sure this research is used responsibly?
We need to have open and honest conversations about the implications.
What do you mean?
Scientists, ethicists, policymakers, the public, everyone needs to be involved.
We need to talk about the potential risks and benefits.
And figure out the best way to move forward.
It's not just about scientific progress. It's about making sure that progress benefits humanity.
Exactly. And that means empowering people to think for themselves.
Tough critical thinkers.
To question what they hear.
To make informed decisions.
And that's a big part of what we do here at Tia Lumen Insights.
We want to give our listeners the tools to navigate the world of information.
To separate fact from fiction. To spot biases. To resist manipulation.
Because knowledge is power.
But only if you know how to use it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the work of Luc Montagnier, remember to stay curious.
Keep asking questions.
And don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Because the truth is out there.
It's up to each of us to find it.
To understand it.
And to use it wisely.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
We hope you'll subscribe to Tia Lumen Insights for more deep dives into the most fascinating and thought-provoking topics out there.
And remember, knowledge is only as powerful as the minds that wield it.